The only thing expected about spaceflight is the unexpected. So we are trained and we expect that we're going to have some surprises.
2 astronauts went up to space on a mission in June that was supposed to last 8 days. And they're still there. Yeah, we're talking about Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams. That's them. That's a pretty cool flip. They were headed to the International Space Station, the ISS, on a spacecraft called the Boeing Starliner. It was a historic mission because it was the first time the Starliner launched with people on board. As they were flying, they had some problems, like leaks in their jet thrusters, which are the motors that reorient the spacecraft in space. Now, they were able to dock at the ISS successfully, but NASA said it wasn't safe enough for them to fly back to Earth on that leaky Starliner. But the Starliner was able to return to Earth on its own, just without Wilmore and Williams. That's why it's empty. They have to come back on a different spacecraft called a SpaceX Dragon capsule that will bring them back to Earth in February of 2025. So what's the deal here? Is this change of plans normal? We talked to this guy, Scott Parazynski, a former astronaut, to break it down and answer some other questions about the ISS. He's an expert. He's been there a couple times, and he even helped to build and repair it.
Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, they went from an 8-day mission to an 8-month mission. They're both great astronauts and very positive people.
This is my happy place. I love being up here in space. It's just fun.
They're probably, pretty happy overall about this great opportunity to spend a little bit more time in space. It's like the coolest job in the universe, being able to go up there. But it's probably a lot tougher on their families back home.
Here we are in the front of the International Space Station where our spacecraft docked.
The International Space Station, or ISS as we call it, it's actually a national laboratory, has been built by 16 countries around the world. We've put laboratory facilities, life support systems, spacewalking capabilities, and robotics such that we can leverage this unique platform in the absence of gravity, in full view of planet Earth, to do all sorts of important science that benefits all of us here on Earth. And we can monitor global environmental change. We can develop new materials for industry and develop miniaturized sensors for medical care. So there's so many different types of science that takes place up there. It's enormous. It's about the size of a football field.
Every day you do something that's work, quote unquote. You can do it upside down. You can do it sideways. So it adds a little different perspective.
Life aboard the International Space Station is really fun because you're floating everywhere you go. You just kind of push off the wall and you fly like Buzz Lightyear. You can flip and spin like an Olympic gymnast. It's really beautiful, and the views out the window are amazing. But it's also hard in a lot of ways. So you can't just set something down like your iPhone and expect it to be there when you go back. Medical experiments, if we have to draw blood, for example, we have to not only restrain the needles and tools that we're working with, but we have to restrain our patient and ourselves so that we can do that procedure. So it's a lot more complicated. The overhead of actually living and working in space takes a lot of careful thought.
Have people gotten stuck on the International Space Station before?
It's not unprecedented for crew members to end up staying a little bit longer, sometimes a lot longer. One of my other friends, he was up on the Mir space station and ended up staying for an additional months. So these things can and do happen. It's just part of the job. Thankfully, it doesn't happen very often.
How long does astronauts have supplies to survive in space on the International Space Station?
We have a lot of resupply ships going to and from the ISS, and so it wasn't a big deal to send up some additional clothing and food to support a larger crew size. They're going to be fine. They're not going to run out of food. There's plenty of work for them to do up there. We have what's called the crew rotation plan, and typically we'll send up 4 crew members at a time on a SpaceX Dragon. The capsule stays docked to the ISS for 6 months, and then that whole crew comes down together. In this case, since we needed to bring Suni and Butch back, and we can't bring them back on Starliner, they actually took the seats of a couple of other friends of mine. The plan is in February, when Expedition 9 has completed their mission, Suni and Butch will take those 2 seats and come back home.
How does it feel to be in space?
It's a dream. It's sort of like if you've ever been snorkeling in your life before, or just kind of floating on top of a pool on a float. It's this peaceful sense of floating. It's really wonderful to kind of learn how to move freely in space.
What does it feel like during liftoff? Because I'm sure it feels different than a plane.
Liftoff is just the most extraordinary thing you can possibly imagine. A launch is sort of like being on the steepest roller coaster you've ever been on in your entire life, except that first steep drop that you take on every roller coaster ride lasts for about 8.5 minutes. And so you feel this incredible sense of acceleration. You're being squeezed back in your seat at 3 times your normal body weight. You just have this huge grin on your face as all this is happening.
What do you have to do to prepare to be an astronaut?
Being a really dedicated student and trying to become as well-rounded as you can is a great way to prepare to become an astronaut. I was a flight engineer on the space shuttle. I flew the robotic arm. I did all sorts of different science, from oceanography to astrophysics and material science and combustion physics. So if you're interested in becoming an astronaut, to have a science or engineering or technical background is really, really helpful. In the not too distant future, though, we're going to be sending people from all walks of life. I think the future is really bright for all of humanity to have an experience in space in the future.
Why do we go to space and what do we do up there?
We do want to understand our place in the universe and our place in the solar system. But ultimately, that investment that we make in space is to develop new technologies, new science, new capabilities, new industries that improve the quality of life here on Earth for all of us.
You just saw Noelle and Tobias. They were picked for the 2024 SpaceKids Press Squad, a STEM education program that sets them up with a trip to the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. We asked them what they love most about space.
Right now, I love asteroids the most. I just like how they were formed. Rocket scientist is my dream job.
I've always really liked space, and I like looking at the stars. And at one point, I was able to see a couple planets out of my window. My favorite part is probably just how pretty it is. Sometimes I would like to look at it from out of the Earth view, kind of. I really want to be a teacher someday too, so I could teach about space.